Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Thanks. I never thought moving in with my best friend would almost destroy me. When people talk about friendship, they paint this picture of loyalty, laughter, and late-night drives with the windows down. For me, friendship was all of that, and more. I grew up pretty much alone. My parents divorced when I was 11, and both of them were too busy rebuilding their own lives to really notice me. My dad moved to Texas, my mom worked double shifts at a hospital in Ohio, and I bounced between them until I turned 18. By then, I was just used to figuring life out on my own. The only real constant I ever had was Nolan. He and I met in middle school. He wasn't the kind of guy people would expect to be a lifelong friend. Loud, sarcastic, always pushing boundaries, but under that he had this loyalty that was unmatched. He'd fight for you even when you didn't ask. When I got into a car wreck at 17, it was Nolan who showed up at the ER before my mom even picked up her phone. When my girlfriend cheated on me, it was Nolan who said, "Screw her, man. Let's go get wings and beer. Life's too short to cry over liars." He was the brother I never had. So when my marriage with Kaylee fell apart last year, I didn't think twice about calling him. She had cheated too. Different face, same story, and I was wrecked. I couldn't stay in that house another day. Nolan answered the phone on the second ring, his voice groggy but steady. "You good, man?" I wasn't, but I told him the truth. "Kaylee's gone. I can't stay here." He didn't hesitate. "Pack your shit. You're staying with me." That's how I ended up in Nolan's two-bedroom apartment on the edge of Cleveland, near Lorraine Avenue. It wasn't fancy. Thin walls, squeaky floors, a kitchen that smelled faintly like grease no matter how often you cleaned. But it was a roof. And it was with him. That felt safer than being anywhere else. At first, it was great. We fell back into that easy rhythm like college all over again. Pizza boxes stacked on the counter. Video games till 2 in the morning, arguing about which basketball team had the better season. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like maybe I could breathe again. But then things shifted. The first thing I noticed was Nolan's dog, Jasper. Normally, Jasper adored me. He was this big golden retriever who acted more like a lapdog than anything else. But about 2 weeks into living there, he started growling at corners. Not at me, not at Nolan, just empty corners of the apartment. Sometimes he'd snarl so fiercely that the hair along his spine stood straight up. I laughed it off at first, joked about ghosts, but it unsettled me. One night, Nolan and I were sitting on the couch watching a Cavs game when Jasper suddenly bolted upright and began barking at the hallway. Loud, guttural barks that shook his whole chest. I looked at Nolan. What the hell's he barking at? Nolan muted the TV. His expression tightened, just slightly. He's been doing that more lately. At what? I asked. He shrugged, but wouldn't meet my eyes. Dunno. Maybe he hears shit outside. These walls are thin, man. I wanted to believe that, but when I got up and peeked down the hallway, it was dead silent. No neighbors, no sounds, just shadows. It wasn't just Jasper. I started hearing things too. The apartment had these creaks, the kind that come with age. But sometimes it wasn't just creaks. Sometimes it was deliberate. Footsteps in the hallway when I knew Nolan was asleep. Whispering, faint, like it was coming from behind the walls. Once, when I was brushing my teeth late at night, I swore. I heard someone exhale right behind me. I spun so fast I nearly slipped, but no one was there. I told myself it was stress, the divorce messing with my head. But then Nolan started acting strange too. One evening we were playing cards, beers lined up between us. He was unusually quiet, shuffling the deck slower than normal. Finally, I said, "You good? You've been off lately." He looked up at me, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen. "You ever feel like this place doesn't want us here?" The words sent a chill through me. "What do you mean?" He set the deck down. "Like it's watching us. Like we're just temporary." I forced a laugh, trying to cut the tension. "Man, don't start with that creepy shit. It's just an apartment." But the way he stared past me toward the hallway made my stomach twist. The worst started on a night I'll never forget. I woke up around 3:12 a.m. to Nolan screaming, not shouting, screaming, raw and terrified. I bolted out of bed and ran to his room. The door was half open, and when I pushed inside, my heart stopped. He was thrashing in bed, eyes wide open like he was awake but couldn't move. His chest was heaving, sweat soaking through his shirt. Jasper was barking hysterically at the corner of the room, teeth bared. "Nolan!" I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "Wake up, man!" His lips moved, but the words barely came out. "It's on me." That's when I felt it too. The air was heavy, pressing down on my chest. My skin prickled like static. For a split second, I swear I saw something. Something crouched in the corner, darker than the shadows, its limbs too long, its head bent unnaturally low. The moment my eyes locked on it, the thing flickered out, like it had never been there, and then just like that, Nolan gasped and sat up, clutching his throat. He looked at me, wild-eyed. "You saw it too, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. After that night, things spiraled. The noises grew louder. Objects moved. Once I walked into the kitchen and every single cabinet door was wide open. Nolan swore he hadn't touched them. Another time, I woke to the sound of crying, deep guttural sobbing coming from the bathroom. But when I pushed the door open, it was empty. We stopped joking about it. We stopped pretending it was nothing. Nolan barely slept, and when he did, the nightmares came. He started drinking more, snapping at me for little things, muttering under his breath. The bond we'd always had, the brotherhood, it was cracking, under the weight of whatever lived in that apartment. The breaking point came one night when I found him standing in the hallway, facing the wall, whispering. "Nolan?" He didn't turn around. His hands were pressed flat against the wall. His voice was low, rhythmic, like he was repeating something. "They're here. They said I can stay, but you don't belong." My stomach dropped. "What the hell are you talking about?" Slowly he turned. His face looked hollow, his eyes sunken. But his smile, God, his smile, wasn't his. "You need to leave." And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of my best friend. I won't drag this out. The final night I spent in that apartment nearly killed me. I woke to the sound of footsteps circling my bed. The air was freezing, my breath visible. I couldn't move, sleep paralysis maybe, but it felt worse. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something crouched again, closer this time. When it leaned toward me, I swear it had Nolan's face, twisted, burnt and eyeless. I broke free of whatever was holding me and bolted out of that room, out of that apartment. Nolan didn't stop me. He just watched from the hallway, his silhouette swallowed by the shadows. I never went back. I packed my shit while he was at work, left the key on the counter, and drove 3 towns over. I tried calling him, texting him, but he never responded. 2 weeks later, I heard he'd been found dead in that apartment. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, just gone. They said it was natural causes, that 30-year-olds die sometimes, in their sleep. But I knew better, because even now, years later, when I'm alone at night, I swear I still hear him whispering, "You don't belong." I never thought my best friend would be the one to almost destroy me. Back in 2012, I was 24, living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Reno, Nevada. Reno wasn't glamorous like Vegas. It was more like a shrunken-down city where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. Casinos lined the main strip. College kids partied in dingy bars, and people who couldn't make it in California drifted there like tumbleweeds. And in that desert town, my best friend was Riley Carter. Riley and I met our freshman year of college. I was the kind of person who studied just enough to get by, worked part-time at a diner, and didn't really care about fitting in. Riley was the exact opposite, loud, wild, magnetic, the kind of guy who could turn a boring Tuesday into the best night of your life. He partied hard, drank like he had a bottomless pit in his stomach, and somehow always had money for shots even when he was broke. At first, I admired him. Hell, I wanted to be like him. Life looked easier when you didn't care about consequences. We became inseparable, brothers, practically. We shared rides, shared secrets, shared hangovers. I trusted him in ways I didn't trust anyone else. But you know that old saying, you live by the sword, you die by the sword? Our sword was liquor and chaos. For a while it was fun, until it wasn't. By the time we were both in our mid-20s, I'd started pulling back from the scene. The constant drinking, the bar fights Riley dragged me into, the empty wallets, it all wore me down. I wanted to slow my life, maybe actually save money, maybe date someone stable. Riley wanted the opposite. He thrived in chaos. If there wasn't yelling, music, or some kind of madness, he felt dead inside. That's when the cracks in our friendship started to show. I remember the night things came to a head. It was a Friday in late October. Cold desert air had already started to bite, and my apartment heater was busted. Riley had promised to come over and chill, but I knew what that meant. He wanted to drink at my place because he'd burned too many bridges at bars around town. When he showed up, he already reeked of whiskey. His eyes were glassy, his walk uneven. "Bro, you got beer in the fridge, right?" he said, stomping inside without waiting for me to answer. I sighed. "Riley, come on, man. I told you I wanted a sober night. Just movies or whatever." "Movies?" he scoffed, spinning toward me with this lopsided grin. "Jesus, you sound like somebody's dad. What happened to you, man? You used to be fun." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm still fun. I don't want to get drunk every night. I gotta work at 8 tomorrow." He dropped onto my couch like it belonged to him, digging into his pocket and pulling out a flask. "So, call in." "Who cares?" That was always Riley. Who cares? Who cares if the rent was late? Who cares if we spent our last $20 on booze? Who cares if we woke up with bruises we couldn't explain? But I cared. That night, after he passed out on my couch, I decided I was done. With him, with the cycle, with all of it. The next day I told him. I said I couldn't keep doing this. I needed space. I needed to grow up. He laughed in my face. Literally laughed. "You're dumping me like a girlfriend?" he said, smirking. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm just saying, we're different people now. I don't think we should hang out anymore." His smirk fell. For a long moment he just stared at me. Then he muttered, "You'll regret this," and walked out. Anyone who's had a close friendship like that knows. You end up with each other's stuff. Clothes, video games, chargers, even toiletries. Riley had half his life at my apartment, and I had plenty of my things scattered around his. So we set up a time to trade. He'd bring my stuff, I'd give him his. Simple. Or it should have been. He was supposed to come by around 7 calm that Wednesday. I bagged up his hoodies, a couple video games, and some random junk he'd left. I waited by the door. 7 came and went. Then 7:30, I texted him, "You on your way?" No reply. At 8 calm, I called. Straight to voicemail. Finally, around 8:20, he answered. His voice was slurred. "Relax, man, I'm coming. Got your shit right here. Don't cry about it." I clenched my jaw. "You promised you'd come sober. Just don't pull anything, all right?" He laughed, low and ugly. "Jesus, you sound like my mom." Then he hung up. When he finally buzzed the door at almost 9, I opened it and immediately smelled booze. "The strong sour kind that stuck to your clothes? Seriously?" I muttered. He held up a grocery bag with my stuff in it. "Got your precious crap right here. Happy?" "Yeah, thanks. Just hand it over." Instead of giving it to me, he leaned against the door frame. "What, you're not even gonna let me inside? After all the years, man?" I tightened my grip on his bag of stuff. "No, Riley, this is it. We trade and we're done." His grin faltered. His eyes narrowed. "That's cold, man. Real cold. I'm not trying to be cold. I'm trying to move on. Please, just..." He shoved his foot in the door before I could close it. Riley stopped, but he didn't stop. He pushed the door open hard, stepping inside like he owned the place. My heart dropped into my stomach. "Get out," I snapped, trying to keep my voice steady. He dropped my bag of stuff onto my table and sat down, arms crossed. "Not until we talk. I need closure, man. You don't just cut someone off like that. Not after everything." "Closure?" I barked. "You think this is a breakup?" "We're friends, Riley, or we were. There's nothing else to say." He leaned forward, eyes wild. "No, you don't get it. You're my family. You don't just walk away from family." I stepped back toward the hall. "I'm serious, Riley. Leave, or I'm calling the cops." He shot up from the chair, shouting, "Do you want to kill me? Is that what this is? You're killing me." My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. "I'm calling Riley, I swear to God." That's when he turned to my kitchen counter. His hand shot out and grabbed the biggest knife from the block. The world froze. Riley, don't. He tightened his grip on the knife, his knuckles white. His chest heaved, eyes locked on me. I bolted out into the hallway. Phone pressed to my ear, yelling for 911. My voice cracked as I shouted into the phone. My friend has a knife. He broke into my place. Please send someone. Behind me, Riley screamed, "Get off the phone. Get back here!" I kept running down the hall. When I turned to look back, I saw him do something I'll never forget. He turned the knife on himself. Quick, shallow stabs into his stomach, one after another, grunting with every thrust. The sound of it was wet, sharp, horrifying. I screamed and tore down the stairwell, still yelling into the phone. "He's stabbing himself! He's stabbing himself! Please hurry!" By the time the cops arrived, Riley was on the floor outside my apartment, blood soaking through his shirt. The knife was a few feet away, his body twitching. I kept begging the cops not to shoot him, even though he was barely conscious. "He's not trying to hurt anyone else. He's just hurting himself." The EMTs arrived, worked frantically, then wheeled him out on a stretcher. I thought he was going to die, but he didn't. After multiple surgeries, he survived. For months, I felt guilty. Should I have let him inside? Should I have handled it differently? Did I kill our friendship like he screamed at me? But then I heard from someone else that as soon as he healed, he was back to drinking, back to partying, back to being the same Riley. And that's when I realized he wasn't mine to save. It's been over a decade since that night. I don't live in Reno anymore. I moved states, started fresh, but every now and then I still dream about that moment in the hallway. The sound of the knife hitting flesh, his eyes wild and desperate, locking on mine as if to say, "This is your fault." And sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't cut him off, if I'd stayed his partner in chaos, would he still be alive in spirit? Not just walking around as a hollow shell of himself? I'll never know. All I know is this. Sometimes the scariest monsters in life aren't strangers. They're the people you once trusted with everything. The people you once called your best friend. I never thought losing a best friend could feel more violent than a breakup. But that's exactly what happened to me. And the scariest part is, it wasn't some slow drifting apart or a clean cut. It was something darker. Something that changed the way I look at trust, at friendship, at people in general. When I was growing up in a small Midwestern town, friendships meant everything. We didn't have much else. My mom worked long hours at the diner just off Main Street, and my dad, well, he wasn't really around. By the time I was 12, he'd already left for good. No note, no forwarding address. It was just me, my mom, and our tiny rental house with peeling, paint on the porch, and a kitchen that always smelled like coffee, and fried eggs from her uniforms. That's when I met Travis Holt. Travis was the kind of kid people either gravitated toward or avoided completely. Loud, always cracking jokes, kind of rough around the edges, but with this magnetic charm that pulled people in. For me, at 12 years old and desperate for someone to hang out with, he was everything. He lived 2 blocks over in a sagging yellow house with an alcoholic father and a mother who'd pretty much checked out of parenting altogether. He used to say we were 2 halves of the same coin, both of us coming from messed up families, both of us scraping by. We did everything together, rode our bikes until dark, dared each other to sneak into the abandoned grain mill, skipped school to smoke cheap cigarettes we stole from his dad. Travis always pushed the boundaries, and I followed. He made life exciting in a way I'd never experienced before. And when we got older, high school, jobs, parties, it was the same thing. If Travis was there, I was there. But here's the thing about Travis. His charm had a darker side. He liked control. He liked being the one in charge, the one calling the shots. When we were teenagers, I brushed it off as confidence. When we were 20, I started realizing it was something else. "Come on, man," he'd say whenever I hesitated about doing something reckless. "Don't be a pussy. You know I got your back." And I always caved. By the time we were 25, that loyalty was welded into me. He was more than a friend, he was family. My mom even called him her second son. I couldn't see the cracks that were forming until they were too wide to ignore. It was the night everything changed when I really saw it. I'd been dating a girl named Renee for about 3 months. Sweet, sharp-witted, worked as a nurse at the local hospital. She wasn't like the other girls I'd dated. She had her own life, her own plans, and she didn't put up with much bullshit. That night, she came with me to Travis's apartment for a small get-together. A few beers, some music, nothing major. At first, it was fine. Travis cracked his usual jokes, told old stories, made everybody laugh. But as the night went on, I noticed how he kept inserting himself between me and Renee. If I put my arm around her, he'd cut in with some story about the old days. If she tried talking to me, he'd interrupt with, "Hey, remember when?" Finally, Renee leaned over to me in the kitchen and whispered, "Does he always do this?" I shrugged, embarrassed. "Yeah, that's just Travis, but she gave me this look. One I'll never forget. It was half pity, half warning." Later, when everyone was leaving, Travis pulled me aside. His smile was gone. "She's not right for you," he said flatly. I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm serious, man. She's trying to come between us. You don't see it yet, but you will." I laughed it off, but inside something twisted. He sounded dead serious, and it wasn't the first time he'd done that. The controlling behavior only escalated. If I didn't answer his calls right away, he'd blow up my phone with texts. "Yo, where the hell are you?" "Don't ghost me, man. You with her right now?" If I made plans with Renee without inviting him, he'd guilt trip me. Guess I'm just chopped liver now. Crazy how bros get replaced so easy. And if I tried to set boundaries, he'd flip it back on me. "You know I'd do anything for you, right? After all the shit we've been through, and you're just gonna toss me aside for some chick?" It was manipulative. I can see that now. But at the time, it felt like I was being torn in two directions. Loyalty to the guy who'd been there my whole life, and the future I wanted with someone who actually respected me. The breaking point came one hot July night. Renee and I had gone to a cookout at her cousin's place. Travis hadn't been invited. I knew if I told him he'd lose it, so I just didn't mention it. When I got home later that night, there he was, sitting on the steps outside my apartment building, a six-pack of beer at his feet. "Where the hell you been?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. I froze. "Out, why are you here?" "You were with her, weren't you?" I didn't answer. That was enough. He stood up, grabbed one of the beers and hurled it against the brick wall. Glass exploded everywhere. "You think you can just ignore me now, after everything?" His face was red, twisted with rage. "You don't get it. I made you. Without me, you're nothing." "Travis, stop," I said, my voice shaking. "You're drunk. Just go home," but he didn't move. Instead, he picked up another bottle, weighed it in his hand, and for a split second, I swear, I thought he was going to throw it at me. Instead, he smashed it down on the step, shards flying, and screamed, "You're not walking away from me, ever." That was the moment I realized he wasn't just my best friend anymore. He was my abuser. I wish I could say I cut ties right then, but it wasn't that simple. Abusive friendships are just like abusive relationships. You don't walk away clean. He stalked my social media. He showed up at my work. He even cornered Renee one night in the hospital parking lot, telling her to back off before someone gets hurt. It all came to a head one night when I came home late from work. My apartment door was unlocked. At first I thought I'd forgotten to lock it, but when I stepped inside, the place felt wrong. Off. Then I saw it. My big wooden lamp smashed against the wall. My couch cushions slashed open. My framed photo of me and Renee shattered on the floor, and in the middle of the mess, sitting calmly on my coffee table, was Travis. A beer in his hand, smiling. "You finally came home," he said, like nothing was wrong. "We need to talk." My blood went cold. I didn't even respond. I just backed out slowly, grabbed my phone, and called 911. That night ended with cops dragging him out of my apartment while he screamed my name over and over again. But the scariest part wasn't the arrest. It was what he said as they hauled him away. "You can't get rid of me. You'll never get rid of me." Even now, years later, I still don't feel safe. Sometimes I swear I see him in a crowd. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night convinced someone's in my apartment. The police charged him with breaking and entering, property damage, and harassment. He did a short stint in county jail. After that, he disappeared. I don't know where he is now. Maybe another state, maybe another town. But I'll never forget what it felt like to watch my best friend, the person I trusted most, become my worst nightmare. People talk about abusive partners all the time, and they should. But abusive best friends? That's a horror story nobody warns you about. Because they already know you. They know your past, your weaknesses, your fears. And when they turn on you, it's not just betrayal, it's destruction. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head, whispering like a curse, you'll never get rid of me. And deep down, I'm scared he might be right. I never thought I'd end up telling this story, let alone to strangers. For years, I kept it buried because I didn't want anyone to know how close I came to something that could have ruined my life. Or worse. But sometimes when I lie awake at night staring at the cracks in my ceiling, I realize silence only gives memories more power. And if sharing what happened helps even one person recognize the same kind of danger before it's too late, then maybe the whole nightmare wasn't for nothing. When I first moved back to Reno in late 2017, I was in this weird place in my life. I had been living in Portland for about a year, teaching part-time at a small design school. It was fun in some ways. Rainy afternoons, endless coffee shops, and the kind of creative energy that makes you feel like you're plugged into something. But it was also lonely as hell. I'd gone months without anything more intimate than a hug. No dating, no hand-holding, no stolen kisses. Just work, grading papers, and occasional group outings where I smiled more than I felt like smiling. So when I came back home, my old stomping grounds felt different. My parents had downsized to a smaller place. My younger cousins were already grown and scattered, and most of my high school friends had either moved away or were too busy with kids to hang out. The city felt both familiar and foreign, like slipping on an old jacket that didn't quite fit anymore. That was when my closest childhood friend, Leah, came back into my orbit. Leah and I had been inseparable as teenagers, sleepovers, mall trips, late-night talks that stretched until dawn. She wasn't just my friend. She was like an extension of me, the one person I thought I could always trust with anything. But life had taken us in different directions. She'd stayed in Reno, working different jobs and dating a string of guys that never seemed to stick. I had gone chasing degrees and opportunities. We drifted the way people do. The night we reconnected, I still remember vividly. I was standing in line at a crowded grocery store, scrolling through my phone, when someone tapped me on the shoulder. "Ellie? No freaking way," she said, eyes wide. I turned, and there she was. Leah. Same long black hair, same mischievous smile that used to get us into trouble back in the day. She hugged me like no time had passed, and for the first time since moving back, I felt something warm in my chest. "Holy crap," I laughed. "What are the odds?" "Forget odds. It's fate. You're not ghosting this time, right?" That was Leah. Blunt, playful, and sometimes a little sharp, but always pulling you back in. We swapped numbers, made plans to grab dinner that weekend, and just like that, the emptiness I'd been dragging around felt a little lighter. At first, hanging out with Leah again felt like slipping into old rhythms. We'd meet up at diners, sit in her car for hours with the heat blasting, drive aimlessly through town while blasting old playlists. She filled me in on her life. She'd been working as a manager at a call center, hated most of her coworkers, and had just gotten out of another bad relationship. "Guy was a loser," she said, stabbing her fries with more force than necessary. "Couldn't even keep a job, always snooping through my phone, paranoid as hell. I don't need that drama." I nodded, half listening, because Leah always had stories like that. She'd date someone, it would crash and burn, and she'd rant for weeks before moving on. Still, she seemed genuinely happy to have me back, and honestly, I was happy too. But then, little things started creeping in. The first time was when she came over to my apartment to watch movies. I'd just signed the lease on a one-bedroom place downtown. Nothing fancy, but enough for me. I remember her looking around with this strange smile. "Cute place," she said. "Way better than my dump." "You always were the responsible one, huh?" There was a bite in her voice that made me shift uncomfortably. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was reading too much into it. Then another night, after we'd had a few drinks at a bar, she started asking about my dating life. "Anyone on the horizon?" she pressed. "Not really," I admitted. "I've been thinking about trying online dating, but I don't know. It feels awkward." Her face lit up. "Oh my God, yes." "Do it. Seriously, I'll even help you set up your profile." "You'd kill it," I laughed. But later that night, as we sat in my living room, she got more insistent. "Come on. Else, you're gorgeous. You've been single forever. And guys here are dying for someone like you. I'll download Tinder for you right now." I hesitated, but eventually let her. Maybe part of me was flattered by how invested she was. Maybe another part was just tired of feeling lonely. Either way, by the end of the night, I had a profile, swiping left and right while Leah leaned over my shoulder, commenting on every picture. It didn't take long before I matched with a guy. His name was Ryan, a 29-year-old IT specialist who, based on his pictures, was clean-cut and kind of nerdy in a cute way. He sent me a polite opener instead of something gross, which immediately set him apart. I showed Leah. "He's hot," she said, nodding approvingly. "Go out with him." Maybe, I said cautiously. We've only just started talking. But within days, Ryan and I had set up a date, coffee at a small cafe near the river. He was sweet in person, a little nervous, but easy to talk to. We chatted for over 2 hours, and when he walked me to my car, he didn't push for anything more than a hug. I went home glowing. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of possibility. When I told Leah, though, her reaction surprised me. That's it? Just coffee? She asked flatly. Well, yeah, it's the first date, she rolled her eyes. Ellie, you can do better. You don't need some boring IT guy who drinks lattes and talks about servers. You deserve someone exciting. The dismissal stung. He was nice. Isn't that what matters? Nice is code for boring. Trust me. I changed the subject, but a knot of unease settled in my chest. Why couldn't she just be happy for me? Weeks went by. Ryan and I kept dating, slowly, cautiously, but consistently. He respected my boundaries, made me laugh, and treated me like I mattered. But the closer I grew to him, the stranger Leah became. She started texting constantly. Where are you? Who are you with? Why didn't you answer? One night, when I didn't reply right away, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. Jesus, Leah, what are you doing here? I asked, startled. You weren't answering, she said, brushing past me into the living room. I thought something happened. I was in the shower. You can't just show up like this. She shrugged, plopping onto my couch. I was worried. Is that such a crime? Her eyes scanned the room, landing on a hoodie Ryan had left draped over a chair. Whose is that? She asked sharply. I froze. It's Ryan's. Her jaw tightened. So he's already leaving his crap here, huh? Didn't take long. It's just a hoodie, Leah. Chill. But she didn't chill. That night she picked at Ryan in every possible way. His job, his looks, even the fact that he wore glasses. It was relentless, and I found myself getting defensive in ways I never expected to around her. Why are you being like this? I finally asked. Because I don't want to see you get hurt, she snapped. You don't know him like I do. I stared at her. You don't know him at all. That was the first night I felt real fear bloom in my stomach. Things escalated quickly after that. Ryan and I grew closer, and Leah grew more hostile. She alternated between clinging to me and lashing out, sending long messages about how I was abandoning her. One night, after too many drinks, she broke. I can't do this, she whispered, sitting on my couch with tears streaking her mascara. Do what? I asked, sitting beside her. Pretend like I'm happy for you. She turned, eyes blazing. I'm not. I hate it. I hate him. I hate that you'd rather be with him than me. I froze. Leah, what are you saying? Her voice cracked. I've loved you since we were kids, Ellie. Don't you get it? I don't want you with him. I want you with me. The air left my lungs. I didn't know what to say. All the years, all the memories. We'd shared everything except this truth. And now it sat between us like a grenade. Leah, I said carefully, I care about you. You're my best friend, but I don't feel that way. Her face twisted, rage and heartbreak mingling. Then don't be surprised when he shows his true colors. Guys like him always do. A few weeks later, Ryan invited me over for dinner at his apartment. It was supposed to be simple. Home-cooked pasta, wine, a quiet night in. But when I got home afterward, my front door was unlocked. My stomach dropped. I knew I'd locked it. Inside, nothing seemed stolen, but something was off. My bedroom closet door was ajar, and when I checked, I found a small box on the floor. Inside were old photos, me and Leah at 13, notes we'd passed in class, little mementos I hadn't seen in years. But I had never brought that box to this apartment. It had been in storage. My blood ran cold. I confronted her the next day. What the hell were you doing in my place, Leah? She didn't even deny it. I needed to remind you of us. Before you throw it all away for him. That's not okay. You can't just break into my apartment. Her voice dropped to a whisper, dangerous and raw. If I can't have you, no one will. I cut her off completely after that. Changed my locks, blocked her number, told Ryan everything. He wanted me to go to the police, but I hesitated. How do you explain years of friendship unraveling into obsession? How do you prove something that feels half like betrayal and half like tragedy? For months, I looked over my shoulder, jumped at every knock, wondered if she was watching me. Then silence. Leah vanished from my life as suddenly as she'd forced her way back into it. Encanta, but sometimes late at night I still think about her. About how easily trust can warp into something darker. About how the people closest to you can sometimes hurt you in ways strangers never could. And I wonder where Leah is now. waiting, watching, or maybe, just maybe, finally letting go. I never thought moving in with my best friend would ruin my life. When I think back on it now, I realize how stupidly blind I was to all the warning signs, the small moments, the things I brushed off because I didn't want to believe the people closest to me could ever bring me harm. But back then, all I cared about was survival. Let me back up a little. My name's Evan Carter, 31 years old, born and raised in a quiet part of Ohio. I'd been married for almost 5 years, and when it all went to hell, the only person I felt I could rely on was my best friend, Noah Benson. We'd been inseparable since high school, the kind of friends who knew each other's families, who spent summers fishing off backroads creeks, who went through every dumb decision of our 20s together. When my marriage collapsed, I didn't have much left. My ex-wife, Melissa, was done with me in every way. She never liked my animals, my German Shepherd, Rocky, and my 2 cats, Milo and Jasper. To her, they were nothing but hair and noise. To me, they were family. She hated how much I loved them, said it made me soft, like I cared more about them than her. The divorce wasn't explosive. It was worse than that. It was cold. Papers, signatures, awkward silences, her taking the furniture she liked, me packing whatever I could carry into my beat-up Ford, and driving off with Rocky in the passenger seat and the cats meowing in carriers in the back. For a while, I bounced between short-term rentals, but then Noah stepped in. "Dude, you can't keep throwing money at these shitty places," he told me one night over beers at his apartment. "Just move in with me. We'll split rent, save you cash. Plus your animals won't be cramped up in some shoebox." At first I resisted. I didn't want to be a burden. But Noah was insistent, and deep down I was tired of drifting. So I moved in. His place was in an older building, tucked away in a quiet part of Maplewood, a mid-sized town that sat a couple hours outside of Cleveland. The apartment wasn't flashy. Creaky floors, outdated cabinets, and a faint musty smell that clung to the hallways. But it was roomy, and there was something comforting about the fact that I wasn't alone. For the first few weeks, it almost felt like old times. Noah and I stayed up late, ordered pizza, watched old horror movies we used to quote back in high school. Rocky loved the extra space, and the cats spent hours prowling around every corner like they owned the place. But then, things started to shift. It began with the animals. Rocky, normally calm, started pacing at night. He'd sit in the hallway, ears pricked, growling at nothing. Milo and Jasper were worse, always hiding, knocking over dishes, clawing at doors as if desperate to get out. One night, I was half asleep when Rocky barked so suddenly it jolted me upright. "What the hell, boy?" I muttered, rubbing my eyes. He was standing at the bedroom door, staring into the darkness of the hallway, growling low and steady. When I turned on the light, the cats were both perched on top of the dresser, hair puffed out, eyes wide. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. My skin crawled, though I had no idea why. The next morning at breakfast, I brought it up. "Noah, have you noticed anything weird lately? Like Rocky acting off or the cats?" Noah didn't even look up from his cereal. Animals are always weird when they're in a new place. "Give it time." "Yeah, but it's been weeks," he smirked. "Maybe they don't like me." I tried to laugh it off, but there was something in his tone I couldn't place. The first real shock came 2 weeks later. I came home from a late shift at work, tired, hungry, just wanting to collapse into bed. But when I opened the door, the apartment was chaos. Plates shattered across the kitchen floor, a chair overturned in the living room, one of Noah's framed posters broken on the ground. I dropped my bag. "What the fuck?" Rocky ran to me immediately, tail low, whining. The cats were nowhere to be seen. "Noah?" I called out, but the apartment was silent. His car wasn't outside, so I figured he wasn't home. I looked at Rocky. "You didn't do this, did you, boy?" He wagged his tail nervously, but kept glancing over my shoulder at nothing. That's when I felt it. A heaviness in the room, like the air itself had weight. I shook it off, blaming exhaustion, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next day, I bought a cheap security camera off Amazon. I needed to know what was happening when I wasn't home. When I checked the footage the following morning, I nearly dropped my coffee. The video showed Rocky lying calmly in the living room, the cats wandering nervously. Then, without warning, Milo shot under the couch. Jasper leapt onto the bookshelf, and Rocky's ears shot up. And then, clear as day, the dining chair scraped across the floor and tipped over. By itself. I replayed the clip over and over, trying to convince myself it was some glitch, some draft, anything. But no matter how many times I watched it, the truth stayed the same. Something invisible was in that apartment. That night, I confronted Noah. "Hey man, I need to show you something," I said, pulling up the footage. He leaned back on the couch, eyes narrowing as he watched. When the chair moved, his reaction was strange. No shock, no fear, just a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Creepy," he said flatly. "That's all you've got?" "Creepy? Dude, something's in here." "Or," he said, setting his beer down, "maybe your pets are just losing their shit." I stared at him. "You think they moved a chair?" He shrugged. "Hey man, I don't know. But if it's that bad, maybe you should take them somewhere else." The way he said it, like he wanted them gone, made my stomach knot. It got worse. A few nights later, I woke up choking. Something heavy pressed against my chest, crushing the air out of me. I clawed at nothing, gasping until suddenly it released and I sat up coughing. Rocky barked furiously at the corner of the room, teeth bared. I flipped on the lamp. Nothing was there, but the cats were both huddled in the closet, trembling. The next morning, I told Noah. "I swear to God, something tried to suffocate me last night." He raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe you had sleep paralysis. Happens all the time." "No, this wasn't that." "All right, chill. If it makes you feel better, we'll burn some sage or whatever the hell people do." But there was a flicker in his eyes I couldn't unsee, a glint of amusement. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I'd come home early from work, and as I unlocked the door, I heard voices inside. One was Noah's, the other was a woman's, low, rough, almost raspy. I froze. He didn't have anyone over that I knew of. Quietly, I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. Noah was standing in the living room with an older woman. Her hair was thin and white, her skin lined and weathered, but her eyes... God, her eyes were black. Not dark, not brown. Black. She held a small cloth bag in one hand and was whispering something I couldn't make out. Noah nodded, listening intently. My heart hammered so hard I thought they'd hear it. I pulled the door shut silently and backed away. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, when I went to get coffee, the woman was gone. Noah acted like nothing had happened. It wasn't until a neighbor, an old man named Mr. Hensley, caught me in the hallway that I got the truth. "You live with Noah, don't you?" he asked. "Yeah, why?" His face darkened. "I saw him here a few nights ago, with that old woman." "Don't you know who she is?" I shook my head. "She's from back in my hometown. People used to whisper about her. Said she practiced black magic. Real nasty stuff. You don't let someone like her into your home." My blood ran cold, and then he added, almost casually, "Funny thing is, I recognized the younger woman who came with her once. Red hair, sharp face. Looked like she was real pissed. You know her? Melissa. My ex-wife." That was the moment everything clicked into place. The animals, the suffocation, the chair. None of it was random. Melissa must have brought that woman here. And Noah, my best friend, he'd let it happen. I confronted him that night. "Why the hell would you let her in here, Noah?" I snapped, fists trembling. He didn't even flinch. "Because you needed to learn, Evan. You've been weak your whole life. Hiding behind your dog, your cats. She offered a way to fix that." "Fix it? By trying to kill me?" He smirked. "By making you stronger. Or breaking you. Either way, you'd stop being pathetic." I wanted to hit him. But before I could move, Rocky growled. Low, dangerous. That's when the air shifted again. Cold, heavy. The lights flickered, and standing in the corner was the old woman. Skin cracked, eyes hollow, jaw unhinged unnaturally. "No," I whispered. She stepped forward, cane tapping against the floor. I ran carrier in one hand, leash in the other. I bolted down the stairs with Rocky and the cats, not daring to look back. I didn't stop until I was 3 blocks away, gasping for breath under a flickering streetlight. I never went back. I left half my belongings there. I didn't care. I found a cheap place across town and moved in the next day. I didn't confront Melissa. What was the point? She'd deny everything. As for Noah, I never heard from him again. 2 months later, I heard he'd moved out. Vanished without saying goodbye to anyone. Part of me still wonders if he was in on it from the start, or if Melissa twisted him somehow. All I know is, since I left, the animals are calm again. Rocky sleeps soundly at the foot of my bed. Milo curls up on the couch. Jasper sprawls in sunspots. But sometimes late at night, when the apartment is quiet and the city outside is asleep, I swear I hear that cane tapping in the hall. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would write something like this down, but maybe that's the only way I'll ever get it out. I grew up on the south side of Akron, Ohio. Not the worst neighborhood you could imagine, but not great either. The kind of place where you learn early on which alleys to avoid, which liquor stores were safe enough to cut through, and when to keep your head down and just keep walking. My mom raised me alone after my dad bailed when I was 6. She worked 2 jobs most of my childhood, first at a diner, then late nights cleaning offices. That meant I spent a lot of nights alone in our creaky duplex, waiting for her headlights to finally hit the driveway. Loneliness was a big part of my life back then. That's probably why I clung so hard to friendships. And out of every friend I ever had, the one who defined my teenage years and haunted me afterward was Alina. Alina moved into the house across the street when we were 12. She had long, dark hair she never bothered brushing, an easy laugh, and this confidence that made her look untouchable even when she was dirt poor like the rest of us. Her mom was a nurse, working nights just like mine, and her dad wasn't in the picture either. We bonded fast. Before long, she was more than a friend. She was my family. We had that kind of friendship where you know each other's houses as well as your own. Half the time she was on my couch, the other half I was raiding her kitchen. She knew the sound my mom's old Honda made pulling up, and I knew which floorboards in her hallway squeaked loud enough to wake her mom. By high school, people would joke we were basically sisters, and for a while that was the happiest time of my life. But the thing about Alina was, she was magnetic. People orbited her, guys especially. She always had someone chasing her, always had some secret she wasn't telling. And I started to see things about her I didn't want to. I'll admit it now. I ignored a lot of red flags. Like the night we were 15, walking home from a football game. A car slowed next to us, and instead of being scared, Alina leaned in through the window, like she knew the guy. He looked like he was in his 20s. She got in without even looking back at me. I stood there on the curb, my stomach twisting. 20 minutes later, she texted me, "All good, see you TMW." Or the time we were 16, when her backpack fell open in my room and I saw a tiny baggie of pills. She snatched it up so fast you'd think it was a loaded gun. "Don't look at me like that," she snapped. "It's just for fun, don't be such a mom." I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself she'd grow out of it. But that was the thing about Alina. She had this way of making you feel like you needed her more than she needed you. And maybe that was true. By senior year, I was trying to keep my grades up, working part-time at a Dollar General, and planning to maybe go to community college. Alina was skipping classes, dating older guys, disappearing for whole weekends. But then she'd show up at my window at 2 a.m, crying and saying I was the only one who really cared about her. And I'd let her in, make her ramen, and sit there while she swore she'd do better. That push and pull, it wore me down. But the night everything changed, the night I realized our friendship was something darker than I wanted to admit, was the summer after graduation. It was July, humid enough to make the air feel like syrup. I had just turned 18 and Mom was working a double. I was supposed to be studying for a placement test, but my phone buzzed with a text from Alina. "Come hang. Got the house to myself." I hesitated. She'd been off the radar for days, and I had promised myself I wouldn't just drop everything anymore. But then another text came. "Please, I don't want to be alone tonight." I threw on my sneakers and crossed the street. Her house was dark except for the flicker of the TV in the living room. Alina was curled up on the couch in an oversized hoodie, a half-empty bottle of Fireball on the coffee table. "Hey," she said, her voice flat. "Hey," I said carefully, sitting down. "What's going on?" She took a swig straight from the bottle. "Nothing. Just don't want to think, you know." We sat in silence for a while, watching some dumb reality show. I thought maybe she'd fall asleep. But then she turned to me, her eyes glassy. "You'd never leave me, right?" she asked suddenly, the way she said it. It wasn't playful. It was heavy, demanding. "Of course not," I said, because what else could I say? Her lips twitched into a smile. "Good. 'Cause I don't know what I'd do if you did." Something about that sent a chill through me. I changed the subject, asked about the guy she'd been seeing. She laughed bitterly and said he was a loser. Then she leaned closer, her tone shifting. "You're the only one who actually gets me. Everyone else is fake. You and me, we're like forever." Her breath smelled like cinnamon whiskey. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, forever." But inside I felt trapped. Around midnight, I told her I should go. She didn't like that. "Stay," she said sharply. "I can't, Lena. I've got my test tomorrow." Her face hardened. "Fine. But if you walk out that door, don't expect me to be here when you come back." I thought it was just drunken dramatics. I left anyway. That was the last night I saw her alive. The next morning, my mom woke me with a knock. Her face was pale. "Sweetheart," she said softly. Something happened at Alina's house. I was out of bed in seconds. There were police cars across the street, lights flashing in the early sunlight. A stretcher was wheeled out the front door, a black bag on top. I remember screaming, "No, no, no," over and over, but nobody answered. Later, we learned it was an overdose, pills and alcohol. Her mom had found her when she came home from her shift. Everyone at school posted tributes. Everyone talked about how bright she was, how tragic it was. But me? I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. "You'd never leave me, right? I don't know what I'd do if you did." Grief is weird. It doesn't come in clean stages like they say. It's messy. It loops back on itself. For months I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face that night. Sometimes, I swore I heard her voice calling my name outside my window. But the first truly strange thing happened about 2 weeks after the funeral. I was in my room, scrolling on my phone, when I got a Snapchat notification from Alina. I froze. It had to be a glitch. I opened it anyway. It was a photo of my street, taken from outside. The caption said, "Told you I'd always be here." My whole body went cold. I ran to the window and yanked up the blinds. The street was empty. I showed my mom. She said someone must have hacked her account. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But then the texts started. Unknown numbers. Late at night. "Why'd you leave?" "We said forever. Come outside." I blocked every number, but new ones kept popping up. I stopped going out after dark. I stopped answering the door. And then one night, I woke up to tapping on my window. Soft, deliberate. I didn't move. I just stared. The curtain shifted slightly, like fingers brushing it from the outside. "Alina," I whispered before I could stop myself. The tapping stopped. The next morning, I found a handprint smudged on the glass. Small, like hers. I know what you're thinking. Grief makes people see things, hear things. And maybe that's true. But what happened next wasn't just in my head. One evening, Mom asked me to run to the gas station. I didn't want to, but I went. On the walk back, I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, I saw her, Alina. Same hoodie, same tangled hair. She was standing under the streetlight staring at me. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. I blinked, and she was gone. I ran the rest of the way home. That night, another message came. "You saw me." I was in bed, half asleep, when my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was a photo of me, sleeping in my bed. I screamed so loud my mom ran in. She saw the photo. We called the cops, but they couldn't trace the number. They said maybe it was a prank. But deep down I knew it was her, or what was left of her. I don't know what's worse, that my best friend is gone, or that some part of her never really left. Sometimes I still hear her laugh in the empty house. Sometimes I wake up to the smell of cinnamon whiskey. And sometimes, when I look out my window late at night, I see her standing across the street, waiting, watching. smiling that same untouchable smile. I never thought I'd end up moving in with my best friend at 30. Back in college, I imagined something else for myself, a house, maybe a wife, a kid or two running around, and a steady job where people actually respected me. But life doesn't exactly stick to the blueprint you make when you're 20. When Marissa and I split up after nearly 6 years together, it wasn't just a breakup. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and ripped out the last shred of stability I had. She left with most of the furniture and, truth be told, most of the friends too. What I had left was a half-broken laptop, some clothes, my old futon, and the only living beings I cared about in this world. My husky, Jasper, and my 2 cats, Leo and Tilly. Marissa never liked them. She called Jasper a shedding machine and said the cats were disease-ridden little demons. But for me, they weren't just pets. They were my constants. Through all the fights, through all the late nights working shifts at the warehouse, through all the anxiety and loneliness, I always had their company. So when she slammed the door behind her for the last time, I promised myself I'd never abandon them. The only problem was I had nowhere to go. That's when Dylan came in. Dylan had been my best friend since high school. We weren't the talk every day kind of friends, but we had that unspoken loyalty. He was the kind of guy who could go months without checking in. And then, when you finally met up again, it was like nothing had changed. He lived in this rundown old apartment complex on the north side of town, far from the places Marissa and I used to hang out. When he heard I was basically homeless, he didn't even hesitate. "Bro, just move in with me. I got the spare room. Rent's cheap as hell and I could use the company anyway." I remember standing in his doorway the night I arrived with my boxes, Jasper's leash in one hand and the cats in their carrier in the other. The building was rough. The hallway smelled like stale cigarettes and mildew. The carpet was that faded brown that used to be orange decades ago, with random patches where it had been burned or ripped. The kind of place you don't exactly brag about living in, but Dylan smiled wide, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Welcome home, man." And for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe things would be okay. The animals, though, they didn't feel the same way. From the first night, Jasper was restless. Usually he was my rock, calm, protective, always curling up by the bed without fuss. But that night he wouldn't stop pacing. His nails clicked on the old hardwood floor of the spare room as he moved back and forth, pausing only to stare at the walls like he heard something moving behind them. Leo and Tilly were even worse. Leo kept darting under the bed and refusing to come out, while Tilly perched on top of the dresser with her back arched, eyes wide, ears twitching. At one point she hissed at the empty corner of the room, and I remember laughing nervously and saying, "What's your problem, girl? Ain't nobody there." But the truth? My stomach nodded. I brushed it off. New place, new smells, old building creaks. They'd get used to it. Dylan didn't notice anything strange at first. He was just happy to have someone to drink beers with at night again. We'd sit on his battered old couch, Xbox controllers in hand, a pizza box between us, while Jasper lay nearby with his head on his paws. Dylan would glance over at the cats, shake his head and say, "Man, your cats are freaky. Look at their eyes, always locked on something. You sure you didn't bring ghosts in with you?" I'd laugh, but it was forced. Because every night when Dylan went to bed and the apartment got quiet, the feeling set in, the heavy air, the sense of being watched. And the animals never let me forget it. The real trouble started about 2 weeks in. One night I came back late from a shift at the warehouse. Dylan was already asleep. When I unlocked the apartment door, the first thing I saw was shattered glass all over the living room floor. One of Dylan's picture frames had been ripped clean off the wall. "Jasper," I hissed. But the dog came trotting up from the hallway, tail low, ears pinned back, whining like he was apologizing for something he hadn't even done. The cats were nowhere in sight. I cleaned up the mess, muttering to myself, telling myself maybe one of the cats knocked it down. But in my head I knew that frame had been high up, too high for them. The next day, Dylan noticed. "You pissed at me or something?" he asked over breakfast. "What? No." "Then why'd you throw my photo last night?" "I didn't." Well, it didn't jump off the damn wall by itself. I wanted to argue more, but then Jasper growled, low, deep, and both of us turned to see him standing in the hallway staring into the dark, the fur along his spine raised. "Bro," Dylan muttered. "What the hell is wrong with your dog?" I didn't answer. Because right then, Leo darted out from under the couch and bolted past us like something had just chased him. That was when I decided I needed proof. I bought a cheap security camera online, one of those you can sync to your phone. I set it up in the living room before heading to work the next day. Dylan laughed when he saw me doing it. "You seriously think you're gonna catch a ghost on camera? Man, I just want to know what the hell's messing up your apartment." "Fine. But if it turns out to be you sleepwalking, I'm never letting you live it down." That night, I lay in bed scrolling through my phone until my eyes burned, waiting for a notification. At around 2:47 a.m., the camera buzzed. Motion detected. My heart thudded. I opened the app. At first, everything looked normal. Jasper was curled up by the couch. The cats were prowling around, cautious but calm. Then suddenly, both cats froze, heads snapping in the same direction. Their bodies stiffened, tails puffed. A second later, they scattered, Leo leaping onto the bookshelf and Tilly darting under the couch. Jasper lifted his head, ears pricked. Then, God, I can still see it in my mind, the chair at the dining table scraped back all on its own. No hands, no movement, just a violent jerk like someone had yanked it out. Jasper sprang to his feet, barking and growling at the empty chair. Then the chair tipped over and crashed to the floor. I swear my blood ran cold. I dropped the phone and just sat there in the dark, breathing hard, listening. From the living room came the sound of nails on hardwood. Jasper pacing, growling. Then faintly a soft creak like someone shifting their weight on the old floorboards. But I knew Dylan was asleep. And I knew I was alone. The next night was worse. Dylan and I were on the couch, beers in hand, when Jasper suddenly bolted upright and barked at the hallway. The cats hissed, fur bristling, eyes wide. "Not this shit again," Dylan muttered, but I could hear the edge in his voice. Then the temperature dropped. I'm not exaggerating. 1 second we were sitting there, the next it was like someone had opened the freezer door. My breath fogged in front of me. "What the—" Dylan started, but then the couch shook. I mean the whole damn couch, like someone had kicked it from behind. We both jumped up. "Did you feel that?" I shouted. "Hell yeah, I felt that." Dylan's face had gone pale. Then something shoved me, hard. I stumbled into the coffee table, knocking beers everywhere. Dylan's eyes went wide. "Bro, nobody touched you." Jasper lunged at empty air, teeth bared, growling like he was ready to tear something apart. The cats yowled, bolting for the bedroom. And then I felt it, fingers. Cold, unseen fingers wrapping around my chest, squeezing. My lungs seized. I couldn't breathe. "Eli!" Dylan screamed. He grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back, but my body was dragged across the floor. My shoulder slammed into the wall. My head cracked against the hardwood. I gasped, fighting for air, but the pressure only got worse. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I collapsed, coughing, trembling. Dylan stood over me, face white as paper. "Bro, what the hell was that?" I couldn't answer. All I could do was clutch Jasper's fur while he barked at the empty hallway, his whole body trembling. After that night, Dylan believed me. He didn't crack jokes anymore. He kept the lights on. He locked his bedroom door, but the thing didn't stop. 2 days later, as I was leaving for work, I froze on the landing. At the end of the hallway stood a figure, an old woman. Her skin was charred black, cracked like burned wood with glowing embers flickering beneath. Her mouth hung open at a sick angle, her jaw dislocated, and where her eyes should have been, only hollow sockets, dark and endless. She leaned on a cane, her body trembling with every movement, but her head was angled straight at me, my throat tightened. "Dylan," I whispered. But when I glanced back toward the apartment door, he wasn't there. When I looked again, she was gone. I couldn't take it anymore. I started asking neighbors about the building. Most avoided the topic, just muttered something about bad history and walked away. But one older guy, Mr. Harper, finally talked. He told me that years ago, an old woman had lived in the very unit Dylan now rented. Folks said she practiced things you don't mess with. People whispered about curses, about animals going missing, about strange noises at night. Then one winter there had been a fire. Her apartment burned. She died inside. Or at least her body did. When I asked what she looked like, he described her exactly, right down to the cane. The last straw came one stormy night. Dylan and I were in the kitchen when the lights flickered out. Jasper started barking like crazy. The cats hissed from the counter, staring at the doorway. Then she appeared. Right there, standing in the kitchen, smoke rising off her skin, her jaw hanging loose, her head twitching unnaturally. Dylan froze. Oh my God. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The air was thick, suffocating. Then she lifted her cane and slammed it down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Every cabinet in the kitchen burst open, dishes crashing to the floor. "Get the hell out," Dylan screamed. He grabbed my arm, dragging me while I clutched the cat's carrier and Jasper's leash. We bolted, stumbling down the stairs, the old woman's burned figure jerking after us with impossible speed. We didn't stop until we were outside in the rain, gasping for breath. Jasper whined, pressing against my leg, the cats meowing frantically from the carrier. We never went back. Dylan broke the lease. I stayed with him until I found another place far away. We never spoke about it again, not really. Sometimes he'd start to bring it up after a couple of beers, then just shake his head and say, "Man, nobody would believe us anyway." And he's right. Nobody would. But I know what I saw. I know what we felt, and I'll never forget the sound of those cold, invisible hands dragging me across that floor.